Oh, this one's here. I wasn't expecting this till Friday.
What is it?
It's that one folding phone.
Ah, how much was that?
$1,800.
For a phone?
All right, decided to move this unboxing upstairs. I am so excited it arrived. I don't review many phones around here, mainly because I only review tech that you can draw on, that illustrators would use. Fortunately here, I got the new S Pen. Because it is a folding phone, there are some complexities here that Samsung laid out in their press conferences. For example, for an active stylus like this one to work, you need to have some kind of sensors underneath the screen. Since this is a folding screen, one of the things they had to do was they had to take those sensor pads that go underneath the screen and split them in two, leaving a gap down the middle. And what Samsung is trying to do with software is make up the difference in that gap. After drawing a straight line, that shouldn't be too much of a problem, you know, because you start here, it goes here. We'll just kind of figure out what we should fill in the middle. And you're doing, you know, a really organic line. What's going to happen there? Is it going to get really weird? Is it going to completely lose the signal? Most of your drawing is happening at the center of that screen, right where that gap is. So is this going to be usable? That's the question. I'm kind of skeptical, but we're going to see. It's going to be an interesting week, so let's unbox this thing. We all like to watch Brad from the past struggle to open a box. I did want to note here that since I got this from Samsung's website, I did get a instant credit, and I ended up spending that money on the newly designed S Pen, specifically designed for this fold phone to be a little bit more gentle, so it's not gonna scratch as much, I guess, as the older S Pen. And I also picked up some Galaxy Buds because I have money left over and I like shoving things in my ears. One thing you're gonna notice inside this box, there is no power adapter, but they did include the USB-C cable to plug it into whatever power adapter you may have. The S Pen comes with a little rubbery case that you can slide it into to keep it safe as well, and also some extra nibs. Let's close this. All right. Ooh, that is nice. I wasn't sure where on my website, that's where I rank everything that I test here, where to put this product. I decided to stick it on my tablets page. It's not a perfect fit, obviously, but if you're looking for it, that's where you're gonna find this review. All right, I got everything set up. It was really easy because I was already in the Samsung ecosystem. I was able to transfer everything, my Note, over to the Fold. Worked perfectly the way you'd expect it to. Next up, I'm gonna be shooting some B-roll. All right, now that I have some nice B-roll, let's go through some of these specs. The inside screen is a 7.6-inch AMOLED display. Yes, that is 120 Hertz. The outside screen, also 120 Hertz. That's a 6.2-inch AMOLED display on there. Obviously, the aspect ratio on those two screens is very different. On the inside, we have a Snapdragon 888 processor. You can get this with 256 gigs of storage or 512 gigs of storage. Whichever one you get, you're going to also be getting 12 gigabytes of RAM. Along the back, we have 3 cameras. All 3 of them are 12 megapixels. One of those lenses is a telephoto lens, one of those is a wide-angle lens, and one is an ultra-wide-angle lens. On the front, we have a 10 megapixel selfie camera, and inside, we also have a second selfie camera that's hidden, I use that word loosely, under the display. The Fold also comes in 3 colors. I opted for the Phantom Black. It's a nice matte finish on the back there. And after getting this set up, it's a little bit more fingerprint resistant than I expected. The spine is a glossy black. That does collect fingerprints, but it's very easy to clean up. All right, I was planning on saving this for later, but I gotta know, like, this is the #1 question. What is this like to draw with when you draw across that seam that's coming down the middle? So first and foremost, you probably can't see it from this angle because I set the camera up so there isn't a lot of glare on the screen from where you're looking down on this. From my angle, there's a lot of glare. And what that means is if there's any glare, you're gonna see that seam coming down the middle where that screen folds. The second thing you're gonna see is that as these lines go across the screen, they actually look really good. Like, my first impression is, wow, that works surprisingly well. Whatever's happening on these 2 separate digitizers that's picking up the pen signal is doing a really good job connecting these lines. But the other thing that I'm totally noticing is that you can feel a physical bump because there is that like little divot in there that when you cross that divot, you definitely feel that divot. And I think that's gonna drive a lot of illustrators nuts. It's definitely something that you're gonna have to get used to. And I find that even drawing, you know, organic lines, let me do some circles to see what happens. You know, that's not bad. That is really good. There's one other thing I want to try, which is let's tilt this pen. Oops, let's Can we get a tilt going? Yeah. Because tilt and pressure are the big things that I'm kind of curious about. What happens to pressure when it crosses that threshold? What happens to tilt when it crosses that threshold? And I don't know if you can see it from that angle. Let me zoom in quite a bit. You can definitely tell that that divot is there when you start to use pressure, when you start to use tilt. I think for just normal lines, when you're not adjusting that pressure too much or doing anything crazy, this works extremely well. When it comes to some of the other fancy things that a pen does, you can start to see that ridge pretty clearly. I'm gonna be drawing on this a lot more in a minute, but I really wanted to test it out. Now that that is all set up, we need to figure out what we're gonna be drawing. What is our project today? So I'm going to ask that on Twitter. Give me a 3-word drawing prompt. I'll add a smiley face emoji so they know I'm happy. Now we wait. We've got responses! Wombat, billionaire, working, human, sky, potato. All right, we're going with Jason's. Ferocious flying fungus. That is our prompt. As I figure out how to make this fungus fly, let's talk about what this device is like to draw on. First up, you can only draw on this inside screen, not the smaller outside screen. I did mention earlier that this stylus is specifically designed to work with the fold phone. Now the tech in it isn't any different than any other stylus that Wacom uses. In fact, you can use those styluses here on the fold. The only thing that's really special here is the tip of the pen is a little bit softer. It's a different feeling material, you can definitely tell, and that's to be a little bit nicer to the phone screen, a little bit more gentle, I guess is a better word. This is a Wacom powered ERM stylus. That's a good thing. So your lines aren't gonna blow out anywhere along the pressure curve. It's gonna be able to hold pressure consistently around corners or if you're drawing circles. And I feel that the tilt works reasonably well. Now this is a smaller tip stylus, very small tip stylus. And on Wacom's Pro pens, you're gonna get a longer taper to the edge of the stylus, and that's gonna give you a more natural tilt sensation, but it definitely still works here. Now the most important thing for me is line quality. I like a nice, smooth line from my pens. And good news, this is a Wacom pen, you're gonna get that here. So the pen line itself isn't gonna have a lot of wobble to it, but your hand might. This is a really small tip stylus, and you mix that with the glossy screen that you have here, and it doesn't give you a ton of control. Unlike other S Pens, this tip isn't quite as rubbery, and I think that's probably to keep it from scratching or generally being tough on the screen, obviously, but there is a trade-off to that. Now, as I'm drawing, you're probably gonna notice I am leaving some palm marks here. That's something that you're gonna notice with these Wacom pens. And a lot of these Android apps, you can go into the settings, toggle on things like ignore touch input. That's gonna help you here. After using this, I would say that there are 2 downsides when we're talking about drawing. The first is what I pointed out before, that bump in the middle. You do get a little bit used to it, but if you're drawing a line that's not quite parallel, but then hits that line, you're gonna find that your stylus might actually slide into that groove. You're not gonna like that. It's only gonna happen at some angles, but it definitely does happen. The second downside is holding the phone itself. Now here, when it's sitting on my desk, I had no problems, but unlike holding a tablet like the Galaxy Tab S7 Plus, there aren't any bezels around the edges for your thumb to rest on so you can hold it comfortably. If you're reading on this, and I really like reading on this isn't a big deal if your thumb is sitting on the screen. But when you're drawing, you can't have a thumb or a finger resting on the screen. It's gonna mess up everything. You're gonna get accidental zooms. Bad things happen. It's just not gonna work right. That means if I'm sitting on the couch or a comfortable chair and I'm drawing with this, I have to basically palm this entire device to get a really good grip on it. Holding it like this for long stretches of time it's really uncomfortable. And I have decent sized hands. If you have smaller hands, you're not going to be able to do this. One of the things that a lot of folks like me actually loved about the Galaxy Note is that your stylus fits in the phone. It is always with you. That's the primary benefit. Here, there's nowhere to store the stylus, so you're gonna have to remember to bring it along with you. Overall, I felt like the drawing experience on this was much better than I expected, and I would even say good, but there are some quirks there that you should be aware of, and a lot of those quirks are gonna drive many illustrators crazy. I mentioned at the beginning there are 2 selfie cameras, one on the front and one on the inside. This is that inside camera. It's only a 4 megapixel camera. This is also one of those under display cameras, so you don't have a hole punch or a notch or anything like that. The downside is you can really see the pixels over that camera. This isn't one of those things where you have to look for it. It's right there. In fact, I would consider this distracting. Now, the quality of the selfie camera along the front, hey, this is pretty good. One of the things Samsung has been advertising with the phone is its water resistance. I could chuck this into the lake and there's a pretty good chance it could survive. Now, instead of sealing in the case so water can't get in there like a traditional phone, what they've done is they've waterproofed many of the elements inside the case. So water can still get in there, it just can't damage the components on the inside. All right, so what do I like about it? What do I not like about it? First of all, the foldiness of it. This is probably one of those things that you know ahead of time. Are you going to enjoy it or are you not going to enjoy it? To me, it's incredibly satisfying to open and close the thing, and it just has a cool vibe to it that most phones don't. I also like that Samsung is taking advantage of the fact that it's a wider screen. Many of the apps that they're using here have done the split screen thing. In fact, I've never really used split screening on an Android phone before, but now it's actually useful. You are gonna run into some apps, mostly Instagram, that really aren't designed for that larger screen, and Samsung lets you go into the settings and rewire it and say, hey, yeah, make it expand to the entire screen. That's not without its problems, of course. When you switch to the smaller screen, sometimes it's gonna throw an error at you and force the app to restart if you're using it that way. So it's not a perfect solution, but this is more on Instagram for not following Google's design guidelines than it is for Samsung giving you options to override it. The other thing a lot of people are going to love is the 120 Hz display. That higher refresh rate is going to give you a much smoother scroll and animation and even improve your drawing experience. What did I not like? I've already mentioned most of it. The main thing was the under display camera was underwhelming. Next year they're probably going to nail that, but this year just wasn't ready for prime time. For drawing, this device is only okay. I mentioned the bump in the middle of the screen. That's probably the biggest knock against it. It's not as comfortable to hold as I wish it was. There's just a lot of quirks here. And when we're talking about drawing tech and the price that you're going to be paying for something like this, you might be better off getting last year's Galaxy Note phone and the Tab S7 Plus. And heck, if you find a sale, you're probably gonna get both of those things for less than the cost of one phone, at least this particular phone. Ultimately, I love what this phone represents. It feels new and fresh, but at the same time, it's not made for artists. The S Pen feels like it's just an additional thing that they threw in the package to talk about. It wasn't designed around the S Pen. I think if you're gonna be using it for note-taking, you're probably gonna be pretty well off, but if you're thinking about using it as your all-in-one, this is my drawing tablet and my drawing phone, roll into one thing. I'm not sure it's that. At this price, this probably isn't going to appeal to a lot of artists and illustrators, but I love some of the things they've done here. What do you think? Let me know down below in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you in a couple of days.